Good evening, good morning from the United Nations Academic Impact in New York. I'm Ramu Damodaran. Thank you for joining us for these 75 minutes of conversation. As we settle in, it's my privilege to introduce a singer who will usher in the program for us, Ambassador Rudy Wajri, who has represented India in countries as far afield as Brunei and Colombia and Peru, and is now in the lovely city of Shillong in northeastern India. Rudy, will you lead us in with music, please?
Thank you, Ramo. I must, I'm very happy to be part of this celebration of the 75 years for the Platinum Jubilee of the United Nations. And I must thank my dear, true colleague and friend for more than 40 years, Ramu Damodaran, for an academic impact of the United Nations together, for giving me this opportunity. Rethinking youth entrepreneurship as a subject for the discussion is most appropriate, particularly in the context of the present pandemic, where we have to combat it with so many innovations of all kinds, especially from the youth. We are also meeting, of course, this is the eve of the Gandhi Jayanti, or the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi tomorrow, which is 2nd of October, which is in fact also the celebration of the Day of International Violence under the United Nations. And also, in fact, we are still celebrating his 150th birth anniversary. So, to fit into the occasion, in fact, I have chosen a favorite hymn of Mahatma Gandhi called Lead Kindly Light. So I will sing it so please, thank you very much. Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom, lead down me home. The night is dark and I am far from home. Lead down me home. Keep down my feet. I do not ask to see the distant sea. One step enough for me. I was never danced, nor prayed that thou shouldst lead me home. I love to choose and see my path, but now lead down me home. I love the garish days and spite of fears. Pride rule my will. Remember distant years. So long thy path had blessed me, sure it still will lead me home. rhetoric and torrent too. The night has gone, and with the morn, the angels' faces smile, which I have loved long since and lost a while. We kindly Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. What a way to usher in this program, and it really brings the connection between Gandhiji, whose birthday we celebrate tomorrow as the International Day of Nonviolence, and the subject, because to go to a phrase from that wonderful hymn, he never sought to see the distant scene. One step was enough for him. But these series of steps, beginning almost a century ago, when he urged us in India to spin our own cloth, the Khadi movement, when he asked us to go to the ocean and distill our own salt, the salt satyagraha, every single step was entrepreneurial. When the United Nations first adopted a resolution on entrepreneurship, it was just 8 years ago, piloted by Israel. And I remember Ambassador Ron Prosor at that time saying, Albert Einstein said, logic will take you from A to Z. Imagination will take you everywhere. And he spoke about the unlocking of the mind. And that's what we have been trying to do at the Academic Impact. And that song, Rudy, I think really captured it for us. So in that spirit of Gandhiji as an entrepreneur, including an entrepreneur in ideas, the most obvious of which is nonviolence itself, it's my privilege to begin this conversation with a great friend of the United Nations and of India, Ambassador Danny Kamon, whom I've been privileged to know for more than 15 years. Ambassador Kamon served in Delhi as ambassador, and before that he was the head of Mashav, the Israeli Agency for International Development. And he was ambassador here at the United Nations when the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted a resolution on Holocaust remembrance and education. So we owe a lot to Danny, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Ramu. It's great to see you again. We are also very good personal friends from many years. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Junaid. Thank you to the Academic Impact for organizing this webinar. And thank you very much, Ambassador Rudy, for opening the session with such lovely music. It's not by coincidence that such an important event is taking place on the background of 75 years of the United Nations and a day before the day of commemoration and the International Day of Non-Violence. I was in Delhi for many years. I also visited Ahmedabad, and we saw what you just talked about, Ramu, about the entrepreneurial spirit that Gandhiji led during all those years. Really remarkable, and really, again, thank you very much for this event and for inviting me. Yes, we did initiate the biannual resolution on entrepreneurship for development. We also, in alternative years, initiated a resolution on agricultural technologies for development, and there is a connection between both. We always felt, and we feel both in the UN world and on the ground, if I may say, that we stand in a very special position. Israel as a country stands in a very special position because when we received our independence in 1948, and we had to build a nation from scratch as what today is called a developing country. We were a country in development. We had to learn, we had to build capacities, we had to challenge what today is called the SDGs. We sort of felt we confronted the challenges of what today is called the SDGs even before it was set on the international stage. And having gone through all those challenges and having crossed the barrier between being a developing state and a developed state with the acquired capabilities, we feel that we are in a very crucial position in which we've been there, we've been on both sides, let's say, of the aisle. And we, as part of our diplomacy, part of our vision, even I would say part of a Jewish vision, we are very happy to share what we have learned on our own experience with the rest of the world. And we actually do it. We don't only talk about it, we also do it. And in this resolution, in both resolutions on entrepreneurship for development and on agricultural technologies for development, we have done something which is not UN-like process. We took an activity that is actually happening on the ground, in which we share our experience and others share their own experience. We put it into a UN text, and we offered the UN text to the Second Committee and to the General Assembly in a way that it was first done on the ground and then written in a UN text. And we are very happy that those two resolutions that are adopted in alternative years are adopted with a large majority of the member states. I have to say that the number of sponsors, of co-sponsors, is very big, and this also represents the fact that in the field of development, if you divide the work of the United Nations into peace and security, human rights, and development, I think that if you want to look at results, if you want to look at in areas that are less politicized than other areas, then development is it. And we're very happy that we can contribute to this area with our experience, bringing the Israeli ecosystem, bringing Israeli entrepreneurship and innovation, and also sharing in the same way that we do it on the ground. And maybe later we can give some examples of how we do it in the international arena, in the developing world and in the developed world also, being on both sides, as I said before. Then I think we are very happy to be there, and we're very happy to be this afternoon with you and share this vision with our viewers and our listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danny, Ambassador Carmon. And I think that that's a very powerful way to begin, because the metaphor that you used of a 2012 resolution translating action at the local level into a resolution at the global level found its own resonance 3 years later with the Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you for that connection, and your most recent resolutions have really been for entrepreneurship and sustainable development beyond the original entrepreneurship and development. It's now my privilege to go back to India, to the state of Kerala, where a number of universities have joined in a Kerala Federation for the United Nations Academic Impact. And one of these colleges is the Christu Jyoti College of Management and Technology. And I'm privileged to invite Ms. Meetu Mary George, who's a professor at this college, to share her views again on the subject of entrepreneurship and what is being done at the ground level. Professor George.
Good day to one and all. And this year, 2020, is the 75th anniversary of United Nations. And today, October 1st, is the 30th anniversary of the International Senior Citizens Day. On this note, I would like to start my discourse with a quote on Muhammad Yunus, a social entrepreneur from Bangladesh. And he is a doyen of microfinance, said that young people are capable of doing much more than ever in the history of mankind. All the acknowledgement and gratitude to the senior citizens to the world. And as we all know, this is an entrepreneurial age, and these young, vibrant entrepreneurs are creating revolution that is transforming and renewing the worldwide. And these youngsters are the most important economic agents in the economic augmentation of any country in the world. And you know, when Henry Ford first introduced his reliable car with a steam engine, everybody asked, what so-called problem with a horse? And then he did it. And now, you know, the Tesla founder, that is Elon Musk, he is implementing the sustainable battery systems in the electric cars. Imagine the way we are from. Imagine that. And also, Elon Musk's goal is to implement that is rocket, the space launch vehicles with sustainable renewable energy. And see, my point is that these youngsters can act as a catalyst to the change not only the lifestyle of the people, but the world itself. And when Gen X millennials, that is the flag bearers of the ecosystem preservation, has introduced a very large growth in green business. And we have seen a record number of youth are embracing entrepreneurship as a way of their life. So there should be a systemic approach towards this particular, that is, I would say nothing else, it's green entrepreneurship. In order to create a change, we need entrepreneurial thinking in all the streams of the society, that is from startups to corporate level, and also policy making, and even in the individual actions. So by applying ecological entrepreneurship, I repeat, ecological entrepreneurship, we can negate or minimize the negative effects on the environment. It is due to the business operations that is happening on the society. So these youngsters should focus on creating more and more green products. And yes, sustainable development, as we all know, it's a concept rather emerged in 1987, that is in accordance as a consequences of globalization, industrialization, and population growth. And it was a Brundtland Commission dissolved in 1987 December with Our Common Future. That is documented. This particular document was popularized the term sustainable development. So these youngsters should come forward to do business in green. And I repeat, I just wanted to draw your attention on the entrepreneur, that is social entrepreneur from India. That is a man from Bihar, Irfan Alam. Yes, he started his business when he was just 13. And you know, he just converted the sixth sector of India, that is the rickshaw pullers, into a robust business sector. Imagine a socially committed responsibilities turned into social business operations, the opportunities given to the people. So I also wanted to recommend we should also do a small amount of work in implementing education for entrepreneurship in all the streams of our higher education. And also proper training should be given in this entrepreneurial education to the students. And in accordance with that, ESD, that is Education for Sustainable Development, to balance, that is to equip and empower the integrated approach towards the social, the economic, the ecosystem for a sustainable future. And to my dear youngsters, it's like, don't sit over and think for a great idea to be done. Stop pondering over a great idea. Rather than thinking over again and again, I would prefer a action-oriented plan rather than a theoretical framework. It should be something should be done, like Boyne Flat. When he was 16, he just started to clean the ocean. And he did it. He was that ambitious enough. He was so audacious enough to inspire the common people. So we the people have got a tendency to believe when we hear the word green, it's like less profit or less effective, something that is not making of business or economic or money. It's not like that. As I said, Elon Musk, who is making big, huge amount of money out of his business, green business. And also, if someone has got a vision, someone has got an inspiring idea, if he is able to convince the public, then go for it. Crowdfunding will help you out. Stop convincing your authorities, your governments to grant fund. Go to the people next door. Convince the people next door so that you can do wonders. I would like to conclude my discourse on saying that we can make a paradigm blindness to a paradigm shift. That is from a blindness to a shift that is creating a sustainable Mother Earth for the proper integrated, balanced economic as well as ecosystem for the future generation. Do some real business. Invest your brain, invest your wealth in green and create a better world. Please rethink your business possibilities in accordance with the Mother Nature. And with this, the Court of Ruskin bond, when all the wars are over, a butterfly, a small butterfly will still be beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor George. That was wonderful. And I'm glad that we have the two greenest parts of India represented here, Meghalaya, where Rudy is, and Kerala, where you are. And I think all of us really appreciate the backdrop you've chosen. It brings to mind what Ambassador Kamon spoke about, having been on both sides of the aisle, because also when introducing the resolution in 2012, the Israeli ambassador had said, we have moved from cultivating apples to designing Apple computers. So thank you for that, and thank you for the call to ecological entrepreneurship. You also mentioned senior citizens. If I were a citizen slightly less senior and younger, I would have wanted to grow up to be our next speaker, Sam Vega. Sam is the executive director of the Millennium Campus Network. We are proud in the Academic Impact to be a partner with the Millennium Campus Network, which every year selects Millennium Fellows from around the world for the projects they've done in the human cause. Many of these projects are new, daring, and as you said, Professor George, they are green, both in terms of their environmental friendliness, but also in the sense of being exuberant and experimental. Sam, your thoughts.
Thank you, Ramu. And thank you, distinguished ambassadors, professor, student leaders. It's a massive honor to be here. I was reflecting today and thinking about what I might be able to contribute to this conversation. And the last time that I was at an event with the United Nations Academic Impact was for Charter Day. And I started reflecting, thinking back 75 years, what those moments must have been like. Indeed, the United Nations itself was and is an entrepreneurial endeavor. And I reflected on this core value, a core value as a social entrepreneur that rings true to me is courage. As Professor George said, begin, start, have the courage to start. That is not easy to do. It was not easy to do 75 years ago. It is not easy to do today. What centers us in part from the charter is, and I shared it during Charter Day, and I'll share it again here because I think it bears repeating, is in the preamble, it shares to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person. To reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person. That is our North Star. That is why we are here. That is why we are entrepreneurial. It is to serve that goal, to really uphold and affirm human dignity. And so for me, my journey began 12 years ago. I read Mountains Beyond Mountains. I read The End of Poverty. I learned that a tenth of humanity lives in extreme poverty on less than $1.90 a day. When I was 19, I reached out to the United Nations, and the UN welcomed me, embraced me. And it started with just attending an event and then another and learning about the complexities of the world, but also being invited to be an entrepreneur, to think about what role students could play in advancing the Millennium Development Goals, now the Sustainable Development Goals. When we launched the first iteration of the Millennium Fellowship here in Boston, we had 15 applicants. I think we had 11 Millennium Fellows the first year. And to be honest with you all, we struggled to even get 15 applicants. People kind of said, well, what is this? How can we trust this? But Professor George, I loved your remarks because it really is about having the courage to start. And so what we did more than anything else was we listened. We listened to young leaders. We said, what is it that you really need to be effective in this space? How can we best serve you? We focused on training, on connections, on recognition, on really providing a platform for undergraduates making a difference. Fast forward to 2020, we had 15,000 applicants for the Millennium Fellowship class of 2020 from 1,400 universities around the world. There are now 1,400 Millennium Fellows in the class this year on 80 campuses in 20 countries. And these young leaders, it's from the University of Benin in Nigeria. We're leveraging solar power to provide electricity to 106 community members at night. At the University of the Ozarks, creating a community garden to tackle food insecurity on campus and in the local community. Small grassroots projects advancing the SDGs in community, but in aggregate, reaching more than 500,000 people's lives, positively impacting those lives and communities. And so for me, looking at these last 75 years and fast forwarding to today, this is a moment with COVID-19 that again calls on us to be courageous, calls on us to really step forward and reflect on that North Star, human dignity, and what we can do and what this young generation can do. And so I would just invite youth leaders who are tuning in around the world to be courageous, to higher education, to universities, to be courageous, to really trust your student leaders, to listen to them, to seek to understand what their priorities are, what their agendas are, how we can support them, and to the United Nations, to be courageous as you are. I am so honored and we're so humbled to partner with the United Nations Academic Impact on the Millennium Fellowship. It is an entrepreneurial partnership and endeavor, and the result is that we're helping unlock and unleash the potential of thousands of young leaders for the SDGs. I can't wait to look forward 75 years from today. You know, the young leaders and universities who will be here 75 years from today, and to imagine and reflect on this moment and ask ourselves and have people ask, did we meet the moment? I think with courage we will. If we're all courageous, I think we will. And I invite this generation to plug in at millenniumfellows.org, join the movement. And Ramu, thank you to you for having the courage to believe in young people. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for all you said about the moment we're in, but also putting it in the perspective of 75 years, because if you think of it, creating the United Nations itself was one of the most daring acts of entrepreneurship in human history. I'd now like to hand the floor over to Omar, our team member, who will be conducting the remaining part of our program. Omar?
Thank you very much, Ramu. And it's a privilege for me now to introduce our next speaker. She's a student from CMES College, Kottayam in India, and she's also a youth council member of the Kerala Forum on the United Nations Academic Impact. So, Ms. Subhana, the floor is yours.
Good day to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for this opportunity. This means a lot to me. And I now move on to the speech. So today, since we're talking about rethinking youth entrepreneurship, I think it is first important to address what entrepreneurship means. Now, as we all know, entrepreneurship is simply an outcome of a lot of factors, which includes values, undying spirit, along with the current demands and needs of the society. So oppreneurship, it's all about being a leader who is able to identify the opportunities, and offer solutions in whatever form so as to meet the demands of the current world. And it is simply in pursuit of opportunity, which basically means like it is the pursuit of opportunity regardless of the resources that are currently controlled, and along with a firm mindset to face all the obstacles that comes in the way while making it to the top. Now, youth entrepreneurship isn't a concept that is new to us, especially with the current global youth unemployment rates and the increase in youth population scenarios for entrepreneurship among the youth. As it encourages, now youth entrepreneurship is absolutely necessary because youth, according to the International Labour Organization reports, young people are twice as likely to be unemployed when compared to the adults. And therefore, one way to solve this issue is by encouraging youth entrepreneurship, as it creates job opportunities or employment opportunities for the youth. And it could also act as a channel to make use of the creativity to the fullest of the youth, creativity of the youth to the fullest. Now, but obviously, this will also ensure the implementation of our Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which basically states decent work and economic growth, because economic growth can be accomplished by encouraging youth to come up in entrepreneurship, in business. This goal basically encourages young, small and medium businesses by providing all necessary resources that's needed. Entrepreneurship is absolutely important for the innovation and development of a country. But as obviously as there is always challenges when it comes to youth entrepreneurship, when it comes to creating a startup, there are many challenges. Like one, in my opinion, one main problem or issue that people face is the lack of promotion of their product. If the young people, if their ideas or if their products are actively promoted, and if it's made to reach a larger audience, their ideas could help in sustaining growing economies. Now, and also, like, besides Google and many other big business giants of now, they all started their journey as small startups. Hence, it is important that the government make policies to somehow recognize the the skills of the youth and encourage their skills and creativity by boosting their confidence and like supporting them by providing incentives and all that. Now, another reason that basically contributes to a failed startup ecosystem is the lack of education in the field of business. Like, our education system basically lacks financial education and business knowledge. Now, this has to change because marketing solutions, business strategies, and financial education should be taught to every pupil at school. Because lack of these necessary skills in the field of business leads to a lot of failed startups. And not knowing this, people venture out into the business, not knowing enough about the field. And in that way, we are at a loss. We are at a risk to lose potential talents and skills. That has to change. It is important to build and to develop job creators, which is what we need right now, job creators rather than job seekers. So this will also, our education system, the quality business education, will also enable the students to come up with creative ideas that can gain viable attraction in the market, which will establish them into entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. Our education system must also, encourage out-of-the-box thinking, and it must also, make the students aware of all the ups and downs of creating a startups. Because there is a common misconception that people who are only highly potential, highly abled, or highly influential or resourceful people can be successful in the business field. And people often, the youth of now often, they devalue the amount of work, dedication, effort, and everything that goes into into running a successful business. So by educating them, by teaching them how to differentiate between assets and liabilities and all of that, we can make them make money work for them rather than them working for money. And it is also, as our previous speakers have said, it is also important that we educate them on sustainability. Educating them on sustainability will help us in creating a sustainable community. A community where there are a lot more green public spaces, a community where there is proper urban management, equal participation and inclusion. By educating the youth on the importance of these, we could reform our nation, and which in turn leads to development. Also, it is clearly visible from the past that the major life shift of every era is outlined, designed, and carried out by young entrepreneurs. The human requirement of each era is different, and the earlier generation failed to identify the requirements of the ultra-modern society. Therefore, it is important identifying these requirements, these latest requirements, is an integral particle when it comes to entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship, it doesn't equal freedom or control or wealth in a lot of situations to a lot of people, but it is something that's absolutely necessary for the economy and for development. Therefore, I'd like to conclude by saying that we must rethink our principles or our ideas of entrepreneurship so as to, for the betterment of the society and to develop a society which is much more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Subhana, for providing us your insights and for highlighting the critical relevance of youth entrepreneurship to foster creation of jobs. So we need indeed job creators instead of job seekers. So thank you very much indeed for your remarks. So it is now my privilege to go to the second section of our webinar, which will be based on interactive mode. So we are going to receive some questions from our audience that are joining us live through Teams live event. And we already have questions. The first one will go to Professor George. Professor George, we were asked if you could provide us some models of youth entrepreneurship that might be currently used or fostered in college where you teach, or in the universities and colleges that you have connections to, if you could provide us some examples of that. Thank you.
Okay. I'm working in Christa Jyoti College, that is in India, the Godson country, Kerala. And recently, our students have started an initiation in creating a bunkie car for the campus. That is a startup in our college, and something that is also based on the green principle with the solar energy. And they have even started collecting the fund from selling a bulb, LED bulb, to the public. So that is one of the movements that happened in our college right now. And also recently, we the students are planning for an agriculture farm, vegetable farm right now in our institution, which also implements something that is on the sustainable development.
Thank you very much indeed. I now have a question to Mr. Vega. Mr. Vega, you have a lot of experience reviewing projects and the startup initiative in the framework of the Millennium Campus Network. So, despite the fact that these all initiatives are different and take place in different countries and regions of the world, which are the similarities that you find when it comes to how youth want to create these opportunities, and how do you see youth entrepreneurship from various cultural and international backgrounds? Thank you.
It's a wonderful question. Thank you for it. I think one trend that I see that's important, criteria for success and impact as young entrepreneurs is to be proximate, meaning to really be a part of the communities you're seeking to engage. So when we've seen student projects fail, it's oftentimes, historically, they're actually imposing ideas or initiatives that a community doesn't really believe in. And so to impose from the outside is dangerous. But yeah, to be proximate to community, I think is core. To be courageous and start. I hate to repeat myself, but Professor George, I loved your remarks. I think it's so accurate. This need to really just begin. You can create the world's perfect business plan, strategic plan, and never start. And if we've learned anything from COVID-19 in this moment that we're in, the world is rapidly adapting. It is not going to wait for us to create the perfect plan. It will continue to pivot, and we need to pivot and adapt with it. So adaptive leadership is also key. And we see young leaders in contexts all around the world really seeking to meet the community's needs, goals, and aspirations by being adaptive. COVID-19 and the SDGs in local contexts feel different in different spaces, but those are at least two core values that have stood out to me looking at student projects around the world.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Vega, for your response. I now have a question to Ambassador Rudy, that inspired all of us with your musical performance and your song in your long-standing diplomatic career across the world. What is your opinion about the role of youth, particularly in these challenging times? You have experience in many countries, and you probably have a lot of connections with youth in these different countries. So how do you see the role of youth nowadays for the economic recovery of the international community as a whole in this ongoing pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. In fact, I think, listening to the previous speakers, all of you, in fact, I think the key point is what Professor George was talking about. I like this phrase you said, ecological entrepreneurship. And I think then subsequently others also were talking about, were insisting on that another, sustainability of everything that we do. And I think increasingly, in fact, Mr. Samvagar, you also said, that there is no perfect solution. and I have to keep on adapting. I think I like that. And if you ask me, because this current pandemic, I think there seems to be, the necessity that a different paradigm has to emerge. And as the other speakers have also said, and I think so, I just join in what they have said. And if you ask me, youth all over the world, I think will think more or less the same, whether it's there in New York or in India or in Latin America or in Africa. So I suppose youth now will definitely ask a lot of questions. There will be a lot of thinking, and that's why I said the rethinking youth entrepreneurship is so appropriate. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Rudy. And now I turn to Ambassador Karman. So since Israel has been promoted exponentially, the role of entrepreneurship for development, not only through the resolution adopted by the General Assembly, but also through its development programs at the international level. If you could provide us some examples of these programs that Israel has promoted precisely to foster entrepreneurship at the international level in that developing world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. May I start by saying that listening to all the speakers, as in so many other instances, I sort of looked and saw a puzzle being built because of the different angles that we heard about entrepreneurship and what it means. A real puzzle which also signifies the strength, I would say, of the international community when it comes together in a partnership. We are used to international politics, sometimes frictions, not always everyone understands and agrees with the other. But when it comes to the challenges of development, sustainable development, some things that reach out the last citizen of the world anywhere, the areas that were tackled during these exposés bring really this very important puzzle. As I said before, we have been taking our work from the ground into a UN text, and we're very proud that we have this ongoing and repeating resolution every couple of years. But this is the contrary to implementation. We first implemented and then we put it into a resolution. I'd like to give you a few examples of the work that we have been doing with our partners. We cannot and we will never do things by ourselves, but we have adopted systems and areas and ecosystem, and we have shared the Israeli Startup Nation ecosystem with our partners. So we have one very important partnership with an organization, as an example, of course, an organization called YABT, W-A-B-T, Young American Business Trust. It's an organization that is affiliated with the Organization of American States. With this organization, we have been doing for more than 10 or maybe more years activities in the ground, on the ground, and in Israel, training, capacity building, sharing of best practices, meeting with the various partners of the Israeli Startup Nation ecosystem, meaning government, academia, research and development, finance, all the members of the ecosystem, sharing with them our vision, which, by the way, does not mean that any entrepreneur has to, I mean, each entrepreneur would like to succeed, of course, but the way we approach innovation in our ecosystem means that sometimes maybe 12, 13, 14 startups, talking about startups, will not succeed. But we know that the entrepreneur will start again, because it's okay to argue, it's okay to dare, it's okay to be curious, but it's also okay to fail, knowing that you have the opportunity to restart again. So this partnership with WABT, where more than 22,000 people from Latin America and the Caribbean have already taken part in this activity. We have relatively new activity with UN Habitat in Africa. We even have something very small, but I think acute activity in Rwanda, where entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs take part in a game, in a TV game called Meet the Gorillas, if you know this TV show. And the winners, the 5 winners of this entrepreneur competition are invited by our government to come to Israel and see the Israeli ecosystem and how we can really share, not only in photos and presentations, but also in the real world. And we have a few other activities in which we highlight. So one thing is really the resolution, and the other is the real world and the real activity that we're very proud of, and we're very proud of our partners too, worldwide partners in empowering entrepreneurs and in sharing the Israeli experience.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It is now my privilege to introduce an additional speaker within our panel of experts. This is Dr. Sunita Castria. She worked for the London School of Business and Finance, the Alder University College, the Empowerment Center for the Advancement of Education, and currently she is the manager of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at the American University in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, which happens to be the UNAI SDG Hub for Goal 17. So it is my privilege now to introduce Dr. Sunita. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be a part of this esteemed panel. I'm going to speak from a perspective of what I'm doing on the ground at American University in Dubai. So the AEIC, or the American University Dubai's Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center, its mandate is to activate the Article 6 of the 50-year charter of the Vice President and Prime Minister of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed's vision. And the vision is to graduate businesses from universities rather than graduate students, and to convert universities into an economic ecosystem where students can create ideas, develop those ideas leading to startups. So what are we doing at AEIC? We are running a lot of programs, but the key programs are 4 stages. The initial stage we call the mindset stage, where students come into the program, basically look at a problem in their environment, and based on the problem in their environment, they try to resolve it and create an idea to solve that problem using the design thinking methodology. Now, this course is based on Stanford University and the course on innovation and entrepreneurship that they developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Higher Education in the UAE. Now, once students finish that idea development in the mindset stage, they also learn how to pitch and how to create a business model. From there on, they go to the next stage, which is called the ideation stage and the incubation preparation stage, where the students work on that idea and develop the minimum viable features of their prototype. They work in class sessions, lab sessions, and with mentors, technical experts, to work on creating a functional prototype. They also pitch internally, as well as they pitch to advisory panel that consists of Dubai SME that then funds them. We received about 40K funding in spring semester, where we had 6 success stories emerging out of that. Now, these 6 groups of startups, we call them founders and startups, they go into the next stage, which is the incubation stage, where they work on going to market with their minimum viable features prototype. And how do they do that? They go through a 3-month program where they again work with funders, accelerators, seed capital investors, angel investors, and with other founders, technical experts, to really understand how to bring about, how to reduce the gap between product, market fit, branding, how to do the go-to-market strategy, what exactly it means to go to market, or how much time would it take, what are the challenges. So they actually understand it from the perspective of their own prototype. Now today, out of those 6 startups, we have one of them which is working on a solar panel battery for refugee camps and for construction sites and for where lights go off frequently, and they've already signed a non-disclosure agreement with a multinational company that has headquartered in UK and which is a steel manufacturer to actually produce their product by fall next year. And then I have another startup that's creating a disposable blow dryer for young women. This can be installed in restaurants. And these people are right now importing their byproduct, the earlier product that they require to develop that prototype. I have a third one which is connecting academia to industry by bringing in real life cases of industry into academia. So they have cultivated a web application. So these success stories are real, are something that we've done inbuilt, in-house. From these, students have gone from the mindset stage to actually now signing an NDA, and that's extremely satisfying. So our success story would complete as a center when these students are able to establish their startup and get funding. What is the challenge that I'm facing or we are facing right now is basically the funding challenge. And crowdsourcing is an option that we definitely would like to look for. But in the UAE, even to have a crowdfunding kind of a platform on our website, we need to get the license from the government to be able to do that. But definitely, and we are also looking at angel investors, we're looking at seed funders. So funding definitely is a big challenge. Now, the second thing is, I think sustainable, how to make it sustainable. I think what I've learned through this last 1.5 years of experience and what my students have learned is failure, accepting failure, embracing failure, regarding failure as something that is an important and integral part of your success journey is what makes it sustainable. If you get discouraged with failure, you cannot sustain. So I think that's the only key word that I would like to give here, that failure makes you sustainable. Funding definitely is a challenge, and I'm talking by walking the path. So I speak from a personal experience. So I think that kind of builds into everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sunita from the American University in Dubai. And now, since we're already in the Q&A session, we have received a couple of questions that perhaps you might be able to answer. The first one is, what skills do you think entrepreneurs need? The very basic skills an entrepreneur would need. And the second question would be, for those universities who are starting these entrepreneurship programs, which do you think could be like the very basic step they should consider when doing so?
Okay, what do entrepreneurs need? They need the mindset of a small baby. A mindset that says, that's curious, that doesn't judge, that's willing to learn, and that doesn't stop asking questions. Why? We need a mindset like that. We need innocent mindset. And the second thing is, you require courage, you require bravery, you require empathy, and all that can be cultivated. But the first thing is to understand that we need to learn, to be able to listen, to be able to observe, to be able to empathize with the surrounding environment. I think these are key skills. We think entrepreneurship is like something great, something that is unachievable, something that only few people have, but it basically comes down to being curious, being able to listen, being able to follow your passion. Follow your passion. We have people who here questioned a problem like, why are people not sitting outside Starbucks with an AUD or when there are tables out there? Well, when they asked that question and went and found out that it was a simple problem of bird poop. There was a bird poop that was falling on those tables, so nobody was sitting there. So what is the solution? They came out with a portable umbrella that can be unfolded, that can be taken with you, carried in a small bag. It can be put up on the bench. It can be taken to the desert. It can be taken to the beach. So that was a solution they came out with. So don't stop asking questions, and no problem, no idea is a silly idea. No idea is small. So being able to do that I think is a key skill to have. And what should universities do? I think the first thing that the universities should do is to change the mindset. The mindset of students is when they come into universities, okay, you tell me what I must do and I will do it. Sorry, I'm not going to tell you. I as a teacher, I as a person who's been teaching these courses, I'm a facilitator. I'm not a teacher in the sense that I help them go the path of the process that they need to go, but I don't tell them what is right, what is wrong, and how you should do it, because the how is completely on them, in the sense that change the mindset from the thinking, listening to doing, the doing mindset, action mindset. And that's what we are cultivating within AEIC, and it begins with that. Until you do, until you fall, until you pick up, until you decide, do all that, you will not be able to move on the entrepreneurial path.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sunita. I now have a couple of questions to Ms. Subhana. In India, the first question would be, what would you say to those who have the idea but they do not dare to risk to actually start their entrepreneurship initiative or program? And the second question would be, how would you motivate students right now, given the ongoing challenges and circumstances we are all facing around the world, for them to become young entrepreneurs?
Regardless of your current situation, regardless of the resource that you have and such, it is important to take that, have that courage to move on with it, no matter what. Like, if you have the idea, everything else will basically follow. You catch up, you pick up on these things. If you have the idea, if you have the certain knowledge that you need in order to promote it, then I think it is important. It is you're ready. You could go forward with it. And as far as the second question is concerned, sir, there was a break in the question. I wasn't able to quite well get it. Could you please repeat that again?
Yes, the second question will be in the current circumstances of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, of those who might feel this is not the right time to start or initiate anything. What would you say to them?
I would tell them to wait for the right chance, because if your product, if your ideas are not being, if it's not able to reach a wider audience, if you're not confident enough that you would be able to get a success out of it, then I would say wait for it to end. Or I would say, although your idea might be really good, in order to reach a larger people, it must be promoted. And during such a situation, like the circumstance that we have right now, it is almost it's a very tiring process to get proper marketing. So I would say wait for the opportunity, but also do not give up. If the idea is great, do not give up. Keep working on it to make it better, but establish it once there's proper marketing, once there is a chance that you could catch a lot of attraction to it. Once it's scalable, once it can gain a lot of attraction, establish it. That's what I think.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Subhana. I now have a question to Mr. Vega. What would you say about the importance of collaboration between different startups and on people in different countries to foster youth entrepreneurship?
I love these questions today. These are fantastic. I think one of the things that that the professor referenced was prioritizing empathy and listening, and I love that point. It is so important to really take the time to listen. Learn from others. Do not take an ahistorical approach to this work. There are people who have been doing this for generations, working as entrepreneurs, working to build economies, working to build sustainable economies and make a difference in their communities. And so You know, for us with the Millennium Fellows, we always talk about leading with empathy, humility, inclusion as guiding values. And with respect to collaboration, actually it's happening right now. We have hundreds of Millennium Fellows who are connecting virtually in real time across communities, across campuses, to build communities of practice, to learn from each other. One Millennium Fellow might be better at fundraising, another might be better at volunteer recruitment, another might be better at building a business plan. But the opportunity to actually convene, it's so powerful. And what I would just offer is, for universities that are tuning in, you know, your opportunity is to really be the platform, to be that hub, to be that incubator and accelerator, to bring these young leaders together and say, here are the incentives to collaborate. Collaboration sounds great in practice, in theory. It's very hard to actually do in practice because we get tunnel vision as entrepreneurs sometimes. We want to just excel on our singular project. Achieving the SDGs is going to take more than just a single successful project or initiative. And so it is imperative that we create the right incentives to get young people together. We've focused on training, connections, recognition, providing those, putting those in place as really anchors to say, here's the value that you can get and derive from collaboration. And we've seen that all around the world.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Vega, for responding to this question. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, we have exhausted our time for this interactive session, and now I hand it over to Ramu Damodaran, Chief of the UN Academic Impact. Ramu, back to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Omar, and thank you to our stellar panel. This has been our most viewed webinar to date, and I think the attraction has really been the names we advertised. I'm really grateful to each one of you. I think the tone for our discussion was really set by Ambassador Kamon when he said, we have been there. He was referring to Israel and the fact that Israel is now a partner in so many entrepreneurship and development projects, including, as he mentioned, in the realm of agricultural technology, which has come to the United Nations as well in the form of resolution. But all of us have been there in the sense of aspiring, hoping, and planning, and then using the means at our disposal. And we've touched upon so many of those in this discussion, whether it is education, whether it is finance, or to use the phrase that our young student Sunana used of courage. These are the things that have equipped us to be where we are now and which will continue to inspire us. And again, I think the point that Ambassador Kamon made about a resolution deriving from practical experience really resonates with what Professor George said about the need for action and not words, because if there is one thing that the United Nations is often criticized about, is its propensity for rhetoric, for using phrases and elegant words. In fact, one of our first Nobel Peace Prize winners, Sean McBride of Ireland, once said, "I just cannot keep up with the gobbledygook of United Nations resolutions." And he said very carefully, it's not the fault of the Secretariat, it's the fault of member states. So I'm being a little self-protective here. But as Ambassador Kamon pointed out, it is possible to take the intensity of active experience and translate it into a workable resolution. I think also the idea that Professor George had, and Rudy has referred to this as well, of ecological entrepreneurship is something which is going to be defining for our sustainable development age and for our century. And the idea, again, which Subhana mentioned, of not working for money, but making money work for you. And that is in itself a fascinating thought. Sam, you've talked about your experiences as an entrepreneur yourself, and an entrepreneur, if I may say so, in the realm of ideas. And here again, the ideas that the Millennium Fellows put forward, inspired by you, have translated into very specific projects, which again reflect that spirit of entrepreneurship. And as Dr. Castria gave us a couple of very, very practical examples of how this can be achieved. And the idea, of the phrase that she used about ideation, the fact, again, putting into practice something which is really cerebral or an idea. And also, I was very inspired by the thought she had, let us not be afraid of failure. And that brings us full circle back to the start of our wonderful program, Rudy and the hymn. And if you think of that line in Lead Kindly Light, where the singer says, I loved to choose my own path. Now you will lead me on. At one level, you might think that what the hymn says is that I'm not going to choose my path. You choose my path for me. But I don't think that's a fair interpretation. It certainly would not be, I think, the interpretation that Mahatma Gandhi would have wished. Because what that line says is that I will continue to choose my path. But you, with the values you inspire, of humility, of the dignity and worth of the human person, as Sam reminded us, those values will lead me on the path that I have chosen. And I can think of no metaphor more fitting as we end this program, both for the idea of entrepreneurship, both for the idea of youth and being young, and above all, for the idea of the United Nations. Thank you all for joining us. I'm very grateful to our own academic impact team, Omar, Lanice, Bo, Brenda, Davida, Peyton, and of course, John, Junaid, and the other wonderful members of the Office of Information, Communications and Technology who have brought us together in this technological realm at this difficult time. Please keep in touch with us and with each other, and have a wonderful evening, have a wonderful day.